overall, do you see like AI as a requirement more and more into job description, or as much as you can share? How do you filter out what's really completely not relevant compared to what might be relevant?
Well, I mean, I can give you an example. More often than not, particularly in the job application sense, it's about being able to.
Simon Davies is a senior recruiter, recruitment manager that worked for King Games, ILM, which is Industrial Light and Magic, the company that made the Star Wars, for those that don't know. Scan and VFX, which is one of the best VFX company in the world, specialized in FX, and now launching DAX, Digital Art Exchange, which we will discuss during this conversation. Hi, Simon.
Hey, Julian, how you doing?
Doing great. Do you want to start by introducing yourself a little bit? What's your background? Straight into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Simon Davies, I'm a recruiter. I've been recruiting really in the visual effects and games industry for over 15 years now, really. And recently, well, just over a year ago, started up my own consultancy, Digital Arts Exchange. It's been an interesting period of time over the last 12 months setting up a new business, but it's been good. So thanks very much for having me on the talk today.
My pleasure. I think it was just making so much sense that first I have a few questions, and I see our roles being really complementary. Like you're definitely an expert when it comes to hiring and sourcing, and also connection, right? Because we actually connected to the what was the name of the German fair?
FMX.
FMX, yes, and maybe that's the first good things to be remembered is being on site is making a difference, right?
FMX is a great event, and obviously it was fantastic to attend. It's great to attend every year. You meet fantastic people there, and obviously I've represented over the years there through ILM and Scanline. It's always really good fun. You meet really good people, both on the on the talent side in terms of artists and creatives and things, but also you find out a lot about the latest technical developments and things as well. So really interesting event to get to. If you can get there, if you're in Europe, it's usually around April, May time, end of April. Yeah. It's well worth trying to attend if you can.
Yeah, I'm still connected with the person I met there, and that was just a great event. And it's also not too big, just the right size. So that's really cool. Because I guess today we're gonna cover a little bit few topics. I'll just go through them a little bit. So, establishing some kind of what is current status of the industry at the moment. Then, what is the hiring process? How this is, what's going on behind the scene? Like, not to reveal the whole thing, but at least giving some clues, so maybe people would be able to apply better. I think there is something to be done here. The application success framework, and then career development, definitely, and the elephant in the room, which is digital art exchange, which is something you're going to talk about, which is really interesting for talents that might listening now, or that will listen to the recording. And Q&A if people have a question at the end of it. So yeah, let's start a little bit with what do you think of the current situation with the creative market? We're talking more about Europe, or maybe do you have a wider view than Europe?
I mean, to give you a bit of, from my current situation, so I'm actually doing consulting with Netflix at the moment, as well as a couple of other, several other studios actually around Europe. Netflix, we're consulting really on more of a global level, looking at opportunities places like Mumbai, South Korea with Seoul, um, as well as covering Europe and North America. And I think what's interesting is we're seeing, we started to really see the VFX industry start to emerge from the sort of slump it's been in faster, in particularly in Australia and in South, that sort of Asia Pacific region,
Mm-hmm.
and Seoul. I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that Netflix, for example, is investing a huge amount of money into that region, in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
By so real growth in terms of where they're playing a lot of their projects. Um, but then what's also been, if you look at the wider Asia Pacific region, which would then also include, I guess, the likes of Australia and New Zealand as well, um, those markets seem to have remained relatively buoyant over the last 12 months. You know,
Mm-hmm.
quite as heavily impacted by the workforce reductions that we saw across Europe and North America. India was hit quite heavily. We've seen a lot of redundancies there. But at the same time, I think we're starting to see that bounce back steadily as well. So it's an interesting market. I think on the VFX front, it feels like things are going to start to pick up this year.
Mm-hmm.
The overall sense that I'm getting from studio executives that I'm talking to on a pretty regular basis is that 2025 is definitely shaping up to be a better year than 24. But we're not going to be looking at sort of 2022 levels of employment as yet, which was, I mean, 2022 statistically was the period that we saw the highest levels of employment in visual effects globally.
Yeah.
Going to be quite some time before we get back to that, I think. If we hit anywhere near that kind of level by the end of this year, I think that would be a fantastic achievement, but I don't know how likely that's going to be. So yeah, it's an interesting time. I would say people that I'm talking to are more cautiously optimistic than they were maybe, which is it's definitely a better place to be than we were in January 2024.
That's a good hope, for us to look forward to. I know that a lot of artists are looking for opportunities, and this is good to hear coming from you. Um, Speaking of which, like people that might wait for the next opportunity or really looking for it, searching for it, I'm assuming AI is going through job description more and more, right?
Yeah, I think AI is definitely starting to have an impact on the recruiting process in some areas, but it depends. It really depends more on the recruitment software and tools that studios are using to review and manage their applications.
Mm-hmm.
I know, for example, the software that is used at Scanline, for example, it doesn't rely too much on those kind of keywords and the searches that AI kind of can be used for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the important thing really, when you are, particularly when it comes to the application process, is just to make sure really that you're applying for the right roles, and you are
Yeah.
resume for whichever role you are applying for is relevant. I appreciate, and we see it a lot. People will apply for multiple roles with the same CV. And that in itself can create confusion if you have the same recruiter looking at. Often recruiters will look after several departments, and if somebody is using the same resume to hire to apply for, I don't know, a compositing role and a lighting role, it creates confusion, and people often wonder then, well, what is it this person is actually, and the important thing is particularly, and I can't stress this enough, um, in the current situation that we find ourselves in, where we have a lot of people looking for work, it's really important that you take the time to actually get your resume totally relevant for the role that you are applying for. Because what you have to remember is you are going to be applying along with a huge number of other people who are also looking for work. So you really need to make sure that your resume stands out and hits the right notes for the role that you're. Um, that's always going to be the first point of contact, if you like. And if your resume doesn't appear to be totally relevant for the role, and there are 200 other resumes in the list, I'm afraid it's an easy decision for the recruiter to make in that very first screening stage. Really important to make sure that you are hitting the right marks and notes when you submit your resume.
And one thing you share at some point is like there is really, when it comes to application for one specific position, a vast number of application that actually doesn't make sense that you actually can pull away. And one thing you actually mentioned to Ian podcast, Ian Fiend, that I really like the idea of hyper personalized CV, which is a modulate, something that you can modulate depending of the position you're applying for. It's like, don't hesitate to hyper personalize. And I guess not using AI entirely for it, because you can smell AI to resume. I guess I saw a few of them. It's actually too well polished. It's not interesting. It's almost like.
Yeah, I think AI tools like ChatGPT are fantastic in terms of they can really help you. They can help give you a body of wording for a particular piece of script. But then people really want to know what you're about, So I think it's important that you really take that body of assistance you get from AI and really add your own touches to it. That way, voice to it rather than multiple sort of AI generated, voice adding into one stream. It's important to really, make sure you're putting your own mark and your own stamp on your CV. The other point that I made on that particular podcast as well is that we talk about, as you say, sort of really personalizing it. It's to make sure that you always look at your CV in particular, and this obviously stands the same really kind of thoughts apply for a show reel or a portfolio. Is don't ever look at it as a finished product. It's always going to be a dynamic working document, your resume, that you can. And if you know that you have skills for a particular role, make sure you highlight those before you actually submit your CV. And they're at the top of the sort of list of bullet points that you want people to notice for that particular role. If you're an artist who has a great mix of experience, you could have experience across animation, rigging, or modeling and texturing. There may be times when you're applying for a generalist role where you will be asked to do modeling and texturing. But then if there are other studios, for example, and we know a lot of the larger studios can be quite segmented, where you'll have an assets department that has a modeling team and a texturing team or a surfacing team. So find ways to really break your CV on your reel down to demonstrate those skills and that experience. I think that's really important, and it can help you stand out.
Yeah, I think the way I would use AI for my resume to update it would be actually to throw everything that I have on LinkedIn, everything from previous CV, and ask Claude AI, which I really prefer to ChatGPT. For some reason, I'm trying to, choose one of the other. I'm always keeping Claude for some reason. The result are more precise, especially for those kind of work. And I'm asking Claude to ask me question about how this could be improved. So I'm putting all my data into it in a project. I'm explaining what the job description, what the position is, what the company is, the type of culture the company, because that's also relevant, right? The way you apply, the tone you're going to use. Did you do your due diligence to learn a little bit about the company, and obviously the role and the job description? And then I'm asking the AI. I always, for other requests also, I'll always ask AI before answering. Ask me more questions, so I'm sure you get it. And usually that's provide really good results. And you can really use that not as a final product or end pixel, if you do an analogy with virtual production, but more than a really strong guideline to draft your CV. I think that would be a really powerful way to draft a CV.
Yeah, no, totally, and I think that's exactly where it comes in. You personalize it with your own touch. Only you know how you sound and how you want to express your experience, really. But and I know exactly where you're coming from, because it can sometimes be tricky if you think, oh, where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
Having that base, the AI tools can help you with that for sure. And then it's really about making sure you embellish that with your own personal touch.
Because because sometimes I'm expecting you get 1,000 CV for a position. How do you, as much as you can share, how do you filter out what's really completely not relevant compared to what might be relevant?
Well, I mean, I can give you an example. So I've been hiring some producer roles. So I've been looking after some line producer and production manager roles, and both of those roles received huge numbers of applications, well over 250 applications each on each of those roles. Now, the job description and the job ad very clearly, for example, stated this is a visual effects role. So if you're applying for this role as a producer or a line producer or a production manager, you are expected to have a certain amount of in studio or in project VFX production experience, regardless of what level, whether it's a line producer, production manager, or whatever. And I understand, of course, there are certain levels of crossover from other sort of segments or sectors within creative tech, whether it's sort of immersive projects or motion graphics and design, that kind of thing. But when you're being asked for very specific visual effects production experience, it's very easy for a recruiter to see 5 years of experience with what may very well be a fantastic brand management company or whatever they may be, but it's not a visual effects studio.
Mm-hmm.
And recruiter, if I put that resume in front of the hiring manager, who again is very pushed for time because they have their day job to do as well as reviewing candidates that they may potentially want to meet, the first things they're going to scratch from their list are the people that don't have at the very top of their experience, VFX experience, where you have to be, and it sounds quite ruthless. It has to be to a point. And I think that is why it's really important that when you do apply, you really make sure that you are spending time reviewing the job description or the job ad. Ask yourself, am I really relevant for this role? Does my CV match what I'm asking for?
So go.
Thanks. And particularly, and I think there are times when you can measure whether it's worth applying. And it depends then on, because there will be certain levels of key requirements that will be listed out within the job description activity. But then there'll be the absolute sort of key requirements, which will then be X number of years experience within a studio or environment or within a particular project environment. And if those sort of criteria appear to be a bit more flexible, then it may very well be worth applying. But you really have to measure that. But if you're, for example, applying for a role where the actual job description is being pretty specific about the levels of experience and expertise that the hiring manager is actually looking for, or then I think you really need to think very long and hard before submitting your details. As I said, it sounds harsh, but at the same time, it may be better focusing then your strengths, playing to your strengths, and looking for those roles that you can actually apply for, where you will get real traction, and you will be able to make a difference through the application, the interview process.
And I guess if we want to go even further than that, it would be to think as an entrepreneur or as a business owner and realize that I have no time, and I need relevant like just being in a seat of the people that receive the resume, and you sending or blasting, you know that what you're sending is absolutely, they have very few chance that it actually matches. You're still sending it just in case, which is really useless. So I think empathy for the business you are sending the resume for the business you're applying for, is also respecting a little bit the time of the people from that business. You respecting your own time.
Really, and I think it just points to it demonstrates that you have actually read the role properly. You understand the industry you're applying to. You understand the role that you're applying for. I've lost count of the number of times when one of the roles we recruit for often in visual effects is a pipeline TD, and or a pipeline supervisor. Within on the more technical side. And the number of times I've received resumes from people who have included pictures of oil and gas pipelines that they've worked. They clearly haven't even looked at the job description.
Yeah.
See this job ad, lighting PDs or lighting artists. I've pictures of strip lights and lighting that have been installed in houses as part of their electrical building trade. I mean, I'm sure they're fantastic lighters, and I'm sure those people, the oil and gas pipeline work, are fantastic, but they're not VFX people. So that those are easy to just sort of reject. But again, it takes time, and that's I would always just say to people, really read the job description first.
So really quality over quantity, and I understand the reflex that we might, I need a job, I'm just gonna blast every position I can find as fast as I can. Maybe if I'm in a pipeline, create a bot that can auto apply to everything that have pipeline into it. Maybe that's also that, right? It's automated.
We're at a point now within the hiring market in visual effects, in the creative tech sector. I mean, let's be honest, AAA games and that side of the industry has been pretty severely hit as well over the last 18 months, 24 months. And areas like that, the days where you could just fire off your CV in the hope of getting a foot in the door, I'll do anything. It's like, well, I hate to say it, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people thinking the same thing. And obviously, there are people who are, you're absolutely right, desperate for work, and that is, I mean, there are so many people who have been impacted so badly in the last 2 years. It's unbelievable. But the only way you are going to get really properly back on the job market and back into work, if you've been struggling, is to really take the time to focus on how you're presenting your application, and then you've got to persevere with it. I see updates on LinkedIn regularly, people getting really, really frustrated, and I can totally see why. It's such a competitive market, and if there's only one particular role available that the company's advertising, and you're receiving 300 plus applications, chances are it's going to be a very, very tough recruitment process. So that's why preparation and putting all your best information, your best foot forward is so essential.
Yeah, and it feels to me that AI trend is pushing us to bring the best A game we have. We can provide because yeah, that's the
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? It's really pushing us to be at our best. That's the positive aspect I see in AI. Average is not enough anymore.
Yeah, I read I saw an interesting video come up on one of my feeds earlier. It was over the weekend. Um, the guy, I don't know who he was, but he was basically saying uh, companies that, for example, um, that fail because they're saying AI is taking over their business. Um, his response to that was, it's because you're not engaging with AI that it's
Hmm.
that it's able to sort of to move that way. And look, I'll be totally. I don't know enough about anything on the technical side from from an AI perspective, other than what I see and hear and sort of read in the press. Um, I think from a creative point of view, it definitely has its. It sounds like it's being did quite effectively in certain sectors or within certain departments within visual effects and games. I think particularly around sort of concept art and pre-visualization areas like that. Whether it's and maybe along the lines of some of the what would previously have been considered more entry-level opportunities like roto paint and prep potentially. It has the
Yeah.
ability to really make a bit of a difference there. But I think from what I've seen and from what you keep seeing coming up on various feeds where people are really trying to shout from the rooftops about how awesome a picture looks or how awesome a video that's totally AI generated. I think there's a long way to go yet.
And
Yeah.
do you see in a new trend in the position that are opening? Obviously, creative company, they have established roles. There are also new roles that being created thanks to AI. Um, Overall, do you see like AI as a requirement more and more into job description, or?
No, we're not seeing that yet. But again, I mean, this is something that I think is going to evolve. Um, we're at a point now, for example, where 5, 6 years ago, Houdini was an effects tool that was used for particle simulations and rigid body destruction work, essentially. Um, Houdini is now used across multiple departments by multiple teams in multiple studios, and that's an evolution of a product, right? The evolution of a tool set. So whereas 5 years ago you would see job ads for a creature department where people needed Maya skills and various rigging tools or experience, now you're seeing the request for Houdini in a creature team.
Hmm.
Um, and I think we will probably start to see these enabled tools and things start to creep into skill set requirements, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight. In the same way, I think a lot of people were expecting Unreal to become a massively widely used tool in VFX. It is, it's there. Is it being used in every single studio or department at the moment? No, not really. Um, but it's one of those that is constantly, again, is evolving and is there for people to really learn and make sure you've got it on your tool belt if you need it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely becoming strong tools and that's constantly evolving. I recall, starting on Flame Autodesk, and then it was Shake from Apple, and then it was Nuke from the Foundry, from the compositing standpoint. So that's just natural evolution, right? And
Yeah, and it was kind of similar when Photoshop first launched. Look, it's not exactly the same because obviously Photoshop wouldn't do it for you, but you were moving into a more electronic and digital format rather than you know, pencils or brushes.
I guess if we could evaluate uh, how much you could define the infinite mindset compared to the finite mindset. Oh, and now I know this tool, that's my thing, and I just stick to it because I'm really good there. I guess that would be also something that make a difference on a resume. Just mentioning that you have a infinite mindset compared to learning stuff. Obviously, you need to secure, as you said before. You check the box, the really important and the one that you cannot miss. But then at the bottom of it, maybe adding something like this could be well received. And obviously, that's just the first part. But then you have the interview,
Yeah.
and maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the interview process, it's changed dramatically, right? Since the pandemic, um, since everybody went into lockdown, the days of going into a studio face to face for interviews and things, I think they're largely a thing of the past. Pretty much all of the interviews we book these days are either G Meet calls or Zoom meets or you name it. And it's very rare for people to even request to go into studios or for a studio to request people to come in. I think that in itself kind of changes the dynamic a little bit as well in terms of the interview process. But overall, you still, as in terms of your own interview preparation, um, it's really important to make sure you've done your homework and prepared for what you actually want to say and achieve during that interview. Um, Bearing in mind, the interview panel really is there. I say interview panel, there may be one interviewer, there may be two, there may be three, depending on the role or the studio you're talking to. They will have their own sets of questions and ideas that they want to extract. They want to understand and get an understanding of your experience. And it's really important that you are prepared to be able to talk through your skill set, your experiences, and also to be able to really demonstrate through discussing your previous experiences the sort of behaviors you've had to exhibit in order to achieve your goals and successfully complete your task. And I think something that is really important as recruiters and as hiring managers, we really look out for it a lot. Is the one thing, particularly any sort of digital creative environment, whether you're in visual effects and games and animation, virtual production, if you're on a stage, it's always about 99% of the time you are creative problem solving, and it's about best solutions, how you can create the most efficient workflows, the most efficient ways to complete your task. And is what you're creating, are you able to package that and send it along to the next team and they can effectively open it and use it without having to jump through hoops for that to happen? And it's that mindset, that collective mindset that we really look for. We want to hear examples of how you've sort of come up against challenges within any particular project you may have worked on, the problems you may have had, how you resolved those challenges and came up with creative solutions. I think it's really important to be able to really explain how you've worked and operated with a team in order to successfully deliver. If you sit in an interview and really try and take credit for everything, it doesn't really sit particularly well. I think it was Kathy Kennedy that said we delivered one of the Star Wars projects, and she said it takes a village. It really does. It's not just one studio. It's not just one department. It is an entire team. And so, as an artist, it's really important that whichever department, whichever team you're in, you approach the whole process as a collaborative one and not trying to create all of the solutions yourself. Because quite often there are people who have got really good collective ideas, and it's about really being able to channel that effectively. Um, so yeah, be prepared for when you're in an interview. Be prepared if somebody asks you. So tell us about the last time something went wrong, and then how did you fix it? Be honest. Tell us about when a project was going so far south that you had to rethink the approach, how you were doing it, and how you actually came around to actually achieve the results you did. Um, that's the kind of stuff people like to hear about. It's like, okay, this person really can really think creatively. They were part of a team that came up with solutions, you know, and that's a really important trait to be able to demonstrate. It's a real key behavior to be able to demonstrate within a studio. And the other one is really don't be afraid to ask questions. If you are going into an interview, make sure you have some questions lined up with regards to the role that you're applying for. That in itself just demonstrates that you've done some research. They don't have to be specific questions about the role. Maybe you've covered all of that kind of thing off during the interview already. But have some questions maybe about the studio, about the projects, that kind of thing. Just to show that you have done your research and you are engaged in this project. That kind of thing sits very well as well with recruiters and with the hiring managers. The kind of questions not to ask, though, at that point are things like, well, what's the salary? How many days holiday do I get? The thing, that sort of stuff. If you're successful with the application, that comes as part of the next steps. But during the initial interview, if you're talking to a department supervisor, believe me, all they are going to want to talk about is the creative and the technical side of things. They're not really going to be in a position to talk about salary and holiday pay and things like that.
One thing, you just make me synthesize a little bit that when I'm doing interviews, is really the first filter is really just for, are they meeting the basic criteria? It doesn't have to match 100%, as you said. So not sure if it's still true that women compared to men are applying less and more compared to how much they're meeting expectation. But from my perspective, I didn't saw that. And really the interview process is more about what I'm looking for is the relationship intelligence or emotional intelligence. I prefer relationship because that's way more pragmatic. And as you said, the question you mentioned is really a good one. It's like how much the person also is able to admit mistake they made, because that's tell everything about themselves. If they're not able to show some part of vulnerability while being competent for the role, because it's not about competency anymore. If you're in an interview, it's because we most likely think that you're competent for the role. It's more like, are you gonna fit into the culture, into the team, into that production machine that composed by humans? Because if you are high maintenance, we call it that. It's our jargon. Let's say high maintenance is someone that you constantly has to basically take care of, compared to someone which is low maintenance, which is the ideal candidate, is someone that know what they're doing, know their own value, so they're not negotiating for forever. They just, this is my value. I'm willing think that's my price, and I think we should align around this. Someone that actually able to take feedback, constructive feedback, even during an interview process, and someone that most likely going to be a leader of the team at some point. But sometimes not. Sometimes someone which is really focused on what they're doing. They don't want to be deviated from that. So from the HR side, is really that high maintenance compared to low maintenance. And I guess the interview process is also really to detect that.
Yeah, no, totally. And you touched on something really interesting there as well, the feedback loop in particular. And again, that's something that can really influence you. If you think about the material you're putting on your show reel or in your portfolio, you're putting your as a professional artist or creative person, you are putting your work out there for people to have an opinion on, unfortunately. And believe me, everybody these days has an opinion. And you could be, with all the best will in the world, you could be a new graduate coming into the workplace, or you could be an Academy Award winning VFX supervisor or film director. No matter who you are, if you're putting your work out there, people have an opinion on it, and they will tell you. So it's more often than not, particularly in the job application sense, it's about being able to take on board that feedback, particularly around if you are able to get good feedback, or say, for example, if you do get rejected for a role, and particularly if you've been through an interview process, if you are able to get feedback in terms of what you maybe could have done differently, what the business was looking for, that meant they went in a different direction, but also in terms of your portfolio or your show reel, ask for any kind of constructive feedback you can get from that particular hiring manager, whether they're a supervisor or a lead artist or whoever, because they will be able to really help point out where you may be able to make your reel or your portfolio even better and even more attractive. Because if you think about it, when you get to that point, if you have already been selected for an interview, that means your reel or your portfolio has been reviewed. It means your CV has been checked out. You have, and that has already sort of set off a light for the hiring manager to say, yes, this person looks really interesting. Let's talk to them. The recruiter will then 9 times out of 10 do a screening call with you, which will probably only be 15, 20 minutes, just to sort of make sure that you are who you say you are and have a chat a little bit through your experience. And then from there, you're in there. You are in that process then on your merit in terms of your work has been recognized now. So let's find out more. And whether or not you have all of the pieces of the puzzle that maybe a team is looking for at that point, you may have it, you may not, and there may be other people who may be more suited, or you may be the best person for the job. It really. But any way you can get feedback to understand why you may not have been successful for that particular role, once you've been through the interview process, can be really helpful in terms of your next steps when it comes to your next interviews. I know for a fact the number of times we have interviewed people who maybe the first time round they didn't get offered a job, be they an animator, a compositor, who knows, from any department. Month or two down the line, you have more opportunities coming up, and you're thinking, right, well, actually, these people that we talked to before, some of their profiles now really match what we're looking for. Let's go back and have another chat. Because that good first impression has been made, you don't have a problem wanting to go back to people to see it. And look, they may be available, they may not. But making that first impression, that really good impression, means that you do potentially stay in the loop for future opportunities. So asking for that feedback and engaging I think is really important.
I couldn't agree more. Good impression is really the key element here. Should we have a quick look to Shekhar that send us his CV so we can look at it and maybe provide him some recommendation? So that was during the preparation of this live, actually asking if someone would like to have his resume reviewed. And then after that, we can maybe cover and understand what is DAX in detail, because that's pretty exciting.
I've just requested access for that CV. I've been trying to get into it.
Yeah, let me share my screen also. Is it too small, I guess, for you to see, right?
Yeah, I can't get in there.
Let me just share it to you so we... Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see that too. Here, share. Anyway. All right. You should have access now.
There we go.
All right. I purposely didn't look at it before the conversation to really start from fresh eye.
Yeah.
So I will talk from my perspective, let's say as a manager or human resource. The first thing, and also because I have a design background, it's too condensed. It's almost like it was crushed. I need more space on the left, on the right. You know, just let it breathe. I know you want to provide as much information as possible, but also it's overwhelming for me when I see that as a first step. I don't know where to look, and that's also maybe from my comp background. When you compose something, whether it's a text or an image, is where is the look going? And here there is nowhere I can direct my eyes. So I don't want to start reading because it's too much, and it felt overwhelming. I th- I think the content is great, but I will I will definitely ask Claude or ChatGPT to optimize and reduce the amount of text, because there for me it would require a lot of brain power to read everything. And to be honest, I think I would just put that into AI, and put the job description, ask AI to tell me if it's matching most of the characteristic and why, and then read again.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is, and this is this happens quite often with when you've been in the industry for quite some time. Um, there's a lot of experience to try and cram into 1 or 2 pages. And it's you can understand how it happens because you do want to make sure people understand where you're coming from in terms of your experience. Um, but yeah, I tend to agree. I think what for me is always really helpful is a 2 to 3 line sort of opening statement at the very top, rather than we've got multiple bullet points, which are great, but as you mentioned, Julian, it's almost like a wall of text right the way through. Um, Bullet points are fantastic. They are a great way to draw your eye to key points for sure. But again, I think it's just a little bit too wordy. There's just a little bit too much going on, and it can be, you sort of read the first um, sort of few lines, and then you do sort of get lost a little bit in a lot of the detail. So yeah, I think
Mhm.
condense it down a little bit would be a really good step. I mean, overall, for the amount of for the number of years this person's been in the industry, a 2 page resume like this is actually pretty good going.
Yeah.
I think there are just some tweaks that can be made just to make the wording just a little more punchy and a little less like a solid wall of text. If that makes sense. That way, really sort of highlight your experience. And again, I think depending on what role they were applying for, sure they change some of these key bullet points just to really sort of demonstrate and highlight their skills in a particular area or a particular company. But overall, like you said, I mean, there's some good detail in here. It's just about really being able to pick it out and highlight it really effectively. Having the educational piece at the bottom, I think, is really good. I think also what's again just some real some really good 101 sort of basic. Always start with your most recent work at the top, which this person's done, and work your way down, rather than your first role at the top and having to work down to the bottom of your CV for your most recent. So that kind of making sure it's in the right order, really. Um, and yeah, so having the right sort of information on the top here, so a link to the LinkedIn profile, contact information, very clear, which is useful. It does make it clear in terms of where you can get hold of this person or the contact, all that kind of thing. I think what can also be helpful, particularly in this sort of global world that we operate in now as well, it can be helpful to put your location on your CV, so we have at least an idea of where you're based. Are applying for a role in in Europe or whatever, and you are based maybe in Australia, Canada, it's good for us to be able to know where you're based, because that can help in terms of the application process as well. So yeah, but that's just a thought. I wouldn't say it's essential, but it could be a helpful sort of for the recruiting sort of thing. But yeah, I think overall, as I said, there is some helpful information in here. It just needs to be highlighted and picked out a bit more effectively. And I would take these 4 bullet points at the very top of the resume and maybe try and just condense that into a really short 2 to 3, maximum 4-line paragraph, just really outlining your current situation, what you're looking for.
Yeah, for me, I see a parallel with social network and the fact that with bite-sized content, which I discovering for myself, right? It's for me, it's a new format because I'm used to high-value production and having time to establish the story and all that. But social network, it's like the 3 first seconds. You need to have a good impression. You have to have some movement. You have to have a hook. And I guess looking at a piece of paper the same way, like what is the hook? Am I attracted to read part of it or not? Or is it just something the equivalent of 2-hour lecture that I need to really force myself in, and so helping the manager, the recruiter, actually to read it, right? Just to show a little bit about how much this could be. I guess any kind of Google search would demonstrate that, but any kind of layout with a little bit more space, I think would make sense. And yeah, this is for position of producer, I think, if I recall properly. So
the interesting thing is there are multiple websites and platforms out there now that will offer you tools that will help you generate a resume. So you can input your details, and it will give you multiple different formats to choose from. And I think it's really a lot of the time it's down to how you really want to make sure you're presenting the best possible, again, sort of best foot forward picture of your skills and experience. I know quite often a lot of these formatted resumes will also include maybe a photo, or they'll sort of split pages in half or into sections across. And it really depends on you, I think, in terms of how you feel you can fit your experience into those different kinds of formats. So yeah, what's quite interesting is there are some, particularly when you get sort of MBA level sort of employees or people that are applying for roles. I'm pretty sure there is actually a tool or and a process that MBA caliber people have actually gone through in terms of how they format their resumes, because 9 times out of 10 they would have been in industry for quite some time. But they would still really represent their entire career on a one. And it's a very effective way of doing it. And I think, again, if you look up, if it's of interest to you, you can look up MBA format CVs online, and you can sort of see examples there. I'm not saying it's perfect for everybody, but it just shows you that it can be done. If you really sort of want to calibrate your experience and make sure that you're really highlighting all of your best work and experience, I think it could be a good format to look at.
100%. Yep. All right. So it feels like because there are more candidates that opportunity, it's maybe now valid to have some kind of support in order to to present you in the best shape of way possible to the potential company you are applying for. Um, if I understood correctly, this is something also that you want to provide through DAX, right? Can you just present overall DAX? I was just trying to find a segue to DAX.
Thanks. I mean, look, Dax, we are essentially we are a consultancy. We specialize in recruiting, talent acquisition for visual effects, animation, games, and virtual production studios. We also do some work with on set and sort of post production VFX, that kind of thing as well, where we're sort of working with the actual production companies themselves, and the sort of client side VFX supervisors and things and producers. But we offer a range of different solutions to our clients, which start with the standard sort of recruitment model as a recruitment consultancy, where we work with a particular client and we charge them a fee to place a particular candidate with them. So that's just one of the solutions we have. We take that right through from that into what we call executive search, where we operate on a more senior level, which is a lot more involved in terms of sort of executive level hiring, and that includes a lot more of an in-depth. We call it diagnostic, basically, with the business that we're supporting them to really understand their key requirements for that role.
And if I may ask, usually, we said you create a business in order to answer or to answer a problem. What is the problem you're trying to answer with DAX?
So I think one of the key things we're finding, particularly at the moment, is there are a lot of facilities who, over the last 2 years in particular, obviously they have been impacted by the downturn in work as well. So a lot of studios have cut back on their people teams. They've cut back on their recruiting teams, that kind of thing. So we're here. We actually have a very good team of recruiters who work with us, who we can outsource to various studios to help them with their recruiting. We've done that successfully with a couple of studios so far. We've worked with Untold, we've worked with Blue Bolt, placed a recruiter with them to help them over particular spikes when they've had key requirements, or they've been covering a period of holiday or absence. So what that allows is the studio to actually then have the supervisors and the producers actually focusing on their day jobs and their real work, which is obviously delivering projects, rather than having to plow through hundreds and hundreds of applications for a couple of potential compositing roles, for example. So that's one of the real solutions we offer on the client side. What we're also offering, though, in terms of we are launching a new product very soon, which is a job board, which will also include a number of different pointers, things like these podcasts that we're doing. They'll be appearing on there as well. We're offering various hints and tips around the application process, the interview process, sort of recruitment 101, which artists and people who are looking for work will be able to access. And that is all free content. That doesn't cost anybody anything. So for us, it's about really trying to enable artists and people within the various creative tech industries to maximize their opportunities. To be able to really present themselves in the best way. But then at the same time, we really want to engage and continue to engage with our clients and with various studios to make sure that they are getting the best. They're able to optimize their recruitment process and get the best people into their studios for the work they're trying to do, and the projects they want to deliver. So it's an interesting time. We're seeing a lot happening. We saw through towards the second half of last year, I think some studios were really starting to see a bit more of should we say, green shoots, if you like, in the industry and how things are going to be shaping up through this year. First year working roles, a couple of heads of pipeline, senior pipeline roles, that kind of thing. Again, I think studios were looking at their efficiencies in those areas. And then as we headed towards the back end of last year, where there were projects that were really starting to pick up and deliver, we were able to offer that sort of outsourced solution as well, then offering coverage for the various teams or studios. So it's those are key parts of the business. As I said, the job board will be launching very soon as well, which in itself will then also be a central point with job ads from literally across the various sectors. So that's across VFX, animation, games, virtual production, on set, all of that sort of thing. And that is, I can say, just watch this space. It's coming very soon. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes at the moment.
So let me recap if I got it right. For me, it sounds like a high value exchange platform between talent that you can trust and company that will trust you to provide the best talent for the right position. So basically, a gain of time for everyone. You're filtering out at the source.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here. The role of our team is to make people's lives easier at the end of the day. In the current situation, in particular, in the current climate, as I said, if studios don't have talent acquisition teams or a dedicated sort of resource operating in that area, then they can get overwhelmed very, very quickly with applications for roles. And quite often, that means you don't have the best experience then in terms of identifying the best people for the roles. And also candidates don't, or people who are applying, don't often get the best experience back from the studios, because there is nobody responding in any way. And the number of times you hear about people being ghosted or I've never heard back from anybody, it can be tricky a lot of the time because studios don't have this dedicated resource working on it all of the time. So that in itself can then potentially harm your employer brand, that kind of thing. So we're trying to offer that solution to help make sure that the service we offer can also help elevate the employer brand as well for the hiring studios. Make sure that people who do apply and interact have a good experience during that process.
And because we're transparent and straightforward here on this call, circling back to the high maintenance and low maintenance, I think is if as a company you're able to hire a high ratio of low maintenance people, let's say, you're really in a good spot because the company will run by itself. And if you hiring, because hiring was the most important thing for Steve Jobs. He remember that through several times. For him, that was the most important thing to do, is hiring the right person to deliver their best work. And if you're cheap at this step, it's the next step will be affected big time because by definition.
Yeah, completely. And I think the thing that the conversation I have quite often with hiring managers is in particular is hiring is always a risk. There's never a cast iron guarantee that every single person you hire is going to be perfect for the job. requirements may change within a role, people's skill sets evolve, that kind of thing. Um, but if you run a process effectively and you plan it well and you are able to give really good feedback to your applicants as well, that can help mitigate that risk. If you're asking the right questions through the process and you're asking those same questions consistently, um, then you can really start to build a good picture of what the key behaviors and characteristics are of people who are successful, who can operate successfully within your business.
Yeah, definitely experience is key here. To wrap this up, because I think you drop a lot of really key here that is already enough value for tonight. I'm gonna make sure I repackage that in small bit. That's also me discovering social network and how much I didn't push to announce the live. So we don't have much people connecting. But I'll make sure that this is going to be available on all the forums so people can interact later on through comments. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of reaction because really it's what you need to know if you're looking for a position, to get back on a position. Any words on the evolution of the industry, emerging opportunities, future skill demands? How do you see that? Maybe that's less of down to market right away, but maybe what you foresee.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think for now, I think the key focus for people has just got to be playing to their key strengths within their current sort of role areas of expertise, particularly if they're looking for work. But at the same time, there are tools that are constantly sort of evolving and growing into the studio sort of ecosystem as well. And I mentioned things like Houdini earlier, and Unreal. Those sorts of areas I think are becoming more and more prevalent. And the tools that, if you can equip yourself with them, if you don't have experience, and if you have a way to get a training license or anything like that, find a way to actually start to use some of those tools. They're going to be really, really useful. I think overall, though, if you're moving into the production side of things, for example, having some exposure to tools like ShotGrid or Shotgun, those are really, really important as well. I think that's becoming sort of a standard tool across so many studios now. So that kind of thing, I think that's the kind of belts and braces kind of stuff, for the visual effects industry. On the game side, I mean, there are so many tools that are so constantly evolving. But that would probably need another episode. I think the other important thing is, when you're wherever you are, just don't be afraid to keep learning and keep asking questions. We've all seen how rapidly the industry can move when it needs to, and when things start to change and evolve. Let's be honest, just before the pandemic, whoever thought that the VFX industry and the games industry would have gone largely remote? We were told that it was never going to be possible, and within about 6 weeks of pure necessity, it was amazing how efficient everybody got to be. And I think that ability to adapt and find ways to make things work, that's always going to be a key sort of behavioral requirement for anybody within this industry, no matter what sort of level you're at. It's just knowing that there's always going to be something that new, and the great thing is there's probably always somebody who can tell you something about it. So don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, so true. Being comfortable in the uncertainty of things, it's just the best way to set you up for success. And speaking of which, I think one of the reasons also I wanted a conversation with you is, I think what we are providing is complementary. because I saw you acting. I see, from firsthand your professionalism, your effectiveness, and also humanity. You're someone which is, of course, your part of you is a machine, which is really effective, but part of you is really someone which is fun to hang out with, which I think is super important as a recruiter.
Oh, thanks very much.
and and I would be so that's why I would definitely push people towards your direction, your talented artist. And I think if I can prepare with Mon Expansion and the circle community I'm starting right now, people with the basics, and whenever they're ready to apply seriously, then you can take over. I think that would be a perfect pipeline.
Yeah, send them our way. We're always looking to our candidate base. There's we're talking to a lot of people globally, and the more the merrier. I think the important thing is the more we can socialize the opportunities we have as well. The more people are following us. You find us on LinkedIn. As I said, we'll be launching our new product very soon as well, and I really do intend to share that on the widest possible scale as well. Hopefully, people can see the real sort of merits in terms of what we're doing as well there.
Nice. So the address is wearedax.io. It's showing up right now. I'll also put that on top of the video. And as you said, the website will also evolve. So something to bookmark right away. And I guess we're going to connect later on. We both, I think, learning social media and the format, how it's working.
Definitely, I'm still getting whole podcast thing. So I will. I do intend to get that properly up and running on a regular basis as well.
Sounds great. Well, hopefully we didn't miss anything, but from my perspective, it was really a really cool conversation. Thank you, Simon.
Well, thank you, Julian. Yeah, it's been really good. And if anybody does want to reach out, do please go to the website. But also, I can be reached at simon@wearedax.io, or there's the hello@wearedax.io as well. So please get in touch. And looking forward to hearing from people and connecting.
Sounds great. I put your link and everything under the video where it's going to be published, and people will be able to connect with you.
Good. Thanks, Julian. Have a good night. Take care.
Take care.